Welcome and great to have you join us as we go off script with Sam Monk, Senior Leader of Equippers Church. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hi and welcome to Off Script with Sam Monk, where we talk about what's worked, what hasn't, and leadership lessons. And Sam's, what we often do is we're often commissioning leaders and commissioning pastors and people in different environments. And we often talk about, when people ask us, when you're looking for leaders and pastors and various people, we talk about this thing of people functioning in those roles before we actually position them.
Yeah,
in those
or recognize
roles.
the position.
Recognize that mantle that's already on their life. And often even if it's a credential that we give somebody, it's because they've already functioned in that position maybe for a significant period of time.
Yeah, we're recognizing what they're already doing. We're not making them something that they're not already. Yeah, a lot of people say, you give me the position and I'll function.
Yeah.
And I'll go, no, you function and then we'll recognize the position. And it's good to clarify the position, but the danger is people lead from their position rather than through, an authentic gift of leadership and the gift and the grace that God's put on their life.
And because they're functioning, people have often already grown something. They've even grown a significant small group, or they've grown some area that we're now recognizing, you've already done this stuff and you've led people and you're doing that well, and we think you could do that in a bigger context.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I like the challenge that Peter gives in Peter chapter 5.
Right.
In fact, I think
I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
So 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 1 to 4, and this is the New Living Translation. It says, "And now a word to you who are elders in the churches. I too am an elder and a witness to the sufferings of Christ, and I too will share in his glory when he is revealed to the whole world. As a fellow elder, I appeal to you." So this is where he talks about care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly. Not for what you will get out of it. I love that. But because you are eager to serve God. Don't lord it over people. This is something we talk about all the time. Don't lord that, don't lord from your position really, over
dominate,
people, dominate, assign to your care, but lead them by your own example. And I love this promise. And when the great shepherd appears, you'll receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor. Yeah, that's cool.
That whole scripture is rich with leadership principles. You've first got, don't do it grudgingly, but doing it willingly. It's like, none of us have to do this. We get to do this. We get to be a part of God's plan and outwork this. And, how cool is that? But the whole thing of, I like how he finishes by lead through your example. And one thing about leadership is example is not an ingredient of leadership, it's the whole cake.
Right. That's pretty true.
It's the whole cake, and you can't lead people to places you've never been. There's those expressions out there, but ultimately we've got to give example. And I love even Paul's confidence in the Bible. He was confident enough to say, hey, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And, we've got to ask ourselves, what example are we giving to the people who are following us?
And could we say that about our own lives?
Imitate
me as I don't know if I've actually said that to someone, but that's a great thought, isn't it?
It's just confident. There's a confidence in the direction you're going and who you're following. Because you're just following Jesus, and in the process of following Jesus, you're creating a wake for other people to actually discover who they are and what God's called them to. So,
and all this, the reason why this stuff is important is because we're talking about this in the context of really servanthood or servant leadership. And you mention often, you're never, and I'm paraphrasing, but you're never more like Jesus than when you serve people, when you serve. And servanthood, maybe define servanthood. How do you define servanthood?
Well, the whole thing of serving is we never graduate from it. Okay. It's not like you get to a position and you go, I've done that serving thing. And a lot of people go, I'll serve until I get recognized with the position and then everybody serves me. But again, Jesus, he said himself, he didn't come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And so serving, it's only through serving we reach our potential, and we never graduate from serving. And so I think, if you don't enjoy serving now, you're not going to enjoy it at any point in time. And, serving to me, though, in essence, is doing whatever it takes to see the vision fulfilled.
Great.
It's doing whatever, it's releasing whatever to see that vision realized. And God's vision of heaven on earth, take place. That's what serving is all about. And to me, serving is the most purest form of leadership.
I agree. Totally.
Leadership does not necessarily come from your position. It comes from your ability to serve. And serving, removes the power differential. I love the fact that Jesus, when he came, he descended into greatness.
Yeah.
He didn't rule over people. That's what the Pharisees did, or the leaders of the time did. They dominated people, or they came over top of people. And Peter's encouragement is, don't lord it over people, but lead through example. And there's a strength through serving. You've got to be secure in who you are as a leader to serve another person and not to power up.
But that's a really interesting point, because that goes back to the point that we don't want to position people first, because then the strength maybe is relied in, I've got the title now, I've got the name, the badge on my door, and there's a danger that you lead out of that place, which actually doesn't give you any authority.
No.
When Jesus spoke, they said, look, he's one who's speaking as one who has authority, because not like the Pharisees, it wasn't just simply talking truth, but he was actually serving people in the process, which was so different in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's the danger, is we can have a lot of leadership rhetoric, but where we get our authority from is ultimately the clarity of vision that we have. And, a lot of people are looking for position, but it's actually vision. The moment we stop seeing is the moment we stop leading. Yeah. And what we need to give people is clarity of vision. In fact, I say to the church all the time, because a lot of people like definition. And, I need things defined. I need a job description.
Well, this is the great paradox that I think how you lead, because you're clear in the vision of where we're going, but then it's quite ambiguous in terms of the actual roles and the defined positions. Can be like, that stuff we don't want to be we don't want to spell that out too much for people.
Yeah.
We don't want to say you've got to work within these confines. So we're really clear about where we're going. Yeah. But then it's about, so talk about that context.
Yeah, well, we want clarity of vision, but we want to be flexible when it comes to position.
Right.
Because when people see vision through a position, their vision's always going to be muddied, or it's going to be limited. And a lot of people, are looking at their future through the lens of the responsibility that they've been entrusted with. And clarity of vision only comes through servanthood. When you go, hey, serving is doing whatever it takes. And so it's like in church, you often find yourself doing multiple different jobs. And you can't, if the thing's going to go forward, you go, no, I don't do that. It's like, well, are you going to do whatever it takes to move this thing forward? Because ultimately, if you're not prepared to do that, you're not a servant to the vision. You're more, it's more about your position. And that's where positional leadership muddies vision, is because everybody is looking at the future through the lens of their own personal responsibility. And it goes back, and I think we shared this before, is when we see photographs, we're often looking at the photo we're in, and if we don't look good in the photo's bad. And it's like, no, the photo, in the end, what matters is what everybody else looks like in the photo, and it doesn't matter what we look like, as long as the overall picture is amazing. And I think that's something that goes, gets a little bit skewed, because, we get a position. The challenge is, once you get the position, what are you going to do with that position? And I like Mordecai's challenge to Esther. Don't think you're safe up in that palace there. Maybe you've come into the kingdom for such a time as this.
That's right, yeah.
It's like position. Her gift got her the position of queen. Yeah. But just because she had the position of queen didn't mean she would fulfill her call. Yeah. And her call was to save a nation. Yeah. So many people think their destiny is, I'm called to be a senior pastor. Then they get to be a senior pastor. Yeah. Well, what are you going to do now?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I've arrived, okay.
Yeah, I've arrived. I've got the position. Any position we find ourselves in is ultimately there to serve a call. Yeah. And our security needs to come from our call, not our position. Because ultimately, any position we have is just servant to the call that God's given us, the call and the commission. And I think, if we can break down some of this, I think there will come a lot more clarity. And yes, we need to give descriptions of
sure, yeah. I mean, I think that's important to mention. We have job descriptions, and we have all those things. So we're not, it's not like we don't have those things. Yeah. We just don't want those things to be the things that lead us. And I think just going back to your point of Mordecai, because it goes on to say, hey, if it's not going to be you,
Yeah.
then God will use somebody else. So,
Yeah.
so don't feel like you're the only person that's going to, God will make it happen.
Yeah.
I thought that's a great challenge. So it's almost that thought of, man, don't think yourselves more highly than you ought to. Like we're not trying to lead out of position here. We're always there to serve, and that serving might be at another level.
Yeah.
You often talk about the fact that you're still a small group leader. You're still an e-group leader.
Yeah.
Now you might be leading a different. Well, in fact, you still actually lead an e-group of guys anyway.
Yeah.
But at different levels, you might still lead, but you're still doing the same things. You don't graduate from leading small groups or from serving people.
Well, it's serving people, and it's just like whatever it takes. It's like some people, servanthood, and they think, oh, well, I've got to do these tasks, and it's like they go, oh, I'm a servant because I do this and I do that, and they put it down to different tasks. But servanthood needs to be married to vision.
Right.
Servanthood not married to vision is simply virtue signaling.
Right. So explain that a bit more.
Well, it's just plain, look at me, I'm serving.
Okay. Right.
I'm serving.
With my flowing robes and my...
But the question is your serving or is your helping?
Yeah, good question, yeah.
Is it really pushing the vision forward? Because there's some things I don't do today that I used to do.
Right, yeah.
I don't mind, cleaning up. I don't mind doing a whole lot of other things. But is that the best use of my time to see the vision move forward?
Yeah.
And so sometimes serving is actually, hey, there's some things that I really need to focus on because I can, put on the garment and look like I'm a servant, but really, all I'm doing is just virtue signaling and going like, look at me. So servanthood needs to be married to vision.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
And I think, go back to your point, you touched on before, even in like a corporate context, as organizations grow, and I've worked in a bunch of big corporates, what tends to happen is as you grow in the organization, you get more and more defined roles. There's a lane that you operate in, a very specific lane. But you're right, the people in those organizations that were prepared to go across those lanes to serve another area of the organization, not because they had to, but because they go, actually, I want to see the organization move forward.
Yeah.
Were ones that you did notice, because you go, you don't have to be here, you don't have to do this. Oh, I can handle it. And I just think it does awaken something in people when you see, like, servanthood is so attractive.
Yeah.
People notice it. You know what I mean? When they notice it when it comes in the right place.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a really important thing to talk about, that actually you're never more like Jesus than when you serve. So if we're going to reach a world, then actually the best thing you can do is probably start serving. Like, where am I going to start? We talked about priorities a previous week.
Yeah.
But where am I going to start? Well, figure out where you want to go.
Yeah.
And then the priority's got to be somewhere along the line. Servanthood's you got to start somewhere by serving people.
Well, it's serving, and in the end, and we use this expression, we don't want to use people to fulfill our vision.
Right.
Because, and this is really important, is our vision is people.
People are our vision, yeah, exactly.
People are our vision, is the building of lives, is seeing transformation take place. And so it's coming to a point where you're just secure. See, my role as a leader is not to put my imprint on people.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
My role as a leader is to serve and release what's in them.
Yeah.
They've got a God print on their life.
Yeah, good.
And my role as a leader is to help them discover what has God given them to do, and then create an environment where they can express that dream, that desire that God's put in their life. And I think a controlling leader is coming around and just saying, you need to do this for my vision. Whereas what we're serving is, and I like what Paul says, he says, I was faithful to the heavenly vision.
Cool, that's good, yeah.
And God's given me a vision, but I'm just stewarding it. And his vision, the vision he's given me is a small piece of his his overall vision for what he wants to see happen in the world today. Yeah.
Otherwise, we don't want to be a personality-led church.
No.
Because that's, we've seen how that works for people, and it's,
Yeah, well, it's not about building around an individual, and it's not about us, putting our imprint on people.
I like that. It's great.
The Bible says we're born of an incorruptible seed.
Yeah.
And there's an incorruptible seed that lies within every born-again believer, and our role is to nurture that seed and help it grow and mature, because that has an element of the kingdom in it, and is going to bring a kingdom expression to the world.
That's great.
World around.
Yeah, great chat on servant leadership, Sam. Thanks for that. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks so much for listening, or for watching, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Off Script with Sam Monk. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure you pass it on. We love your feedback, so drop us a line about what topics you'd like to hear about on Off Script with Sam Monk.